So welcome to Interviews with Martin, a series of short videos in which I interview Canadians who meditate in the Christian tradition. In this series, the context is the pandemic, now into its second year. We say that meditation creates community. It's just that the way we do that community, as with so many other things in our lives, has changed dramatically over the past year. And so we have a conversation with meditators who have found ways to continue meeting with others, to pray together in the Spirit of God, and I hope to encourage us on the contemplative path. I am pleased today to introduce and welcome the Reverend Julie Meakin, who works in the Church of the Holy Family in Brampton, Ontario. Welcome, Julie. Good to have you. Good to have you with us. Well, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you come to the Christian meditation community, and what do you do in this community?
Well, thanks so much, Martin. It's great to be here. I always love talking about meditation. I basically got into meditation through my mother, the Reverend Glenda Meakin, who's been a meditator for quite a number of years, and she invited me to come to some talks about 20 years ago, and needless to say, I got hooked. So I can thank my mom for getting me involved.
That's great.
And the Holy Spirit, of course. So what am I doing right now? Currently, I'm leading 2 weekly groups. One is from Holy Family, a very small group, but it's been expanding because we've been having people from other parts of Southern Ontario join us, other churches. And the other one is a brand new group at an Anglican Lutheran church called Holy Spirit of Peace in Mississauga, where my colleague Susan Climo is the pastor. And so there's been great joy in leading those groups, especially during this pandemic time. In April, I gave an introduction to meditation at the Bishop's Youth Ministry Committee retreat. There were about 12, 13, 14 youth leaders, ministry leaders from across the Diocese of Toronto, and that was very well received. I've given workshops on teaching Christian meditation to children at the Children's Ministry Conference, which Wycliffe College holds every November. So I've done that 2 years in a row, 1 year live, last year on Zoom. And been helping WCCM Toronto out a little bit as a moderator of their breakout rooms, monthly meetings, and during the 6-week introductory course that they did in February. And I guess lastly, I wrote a couple of articles, one for a parish newsletter at St. James Anglican Church in Stratford. And last year, I wrote an article for the Christian Courier, which is a Christian monthly, I guess, newspaper that looks at the intersection between Christianity and culture and social justice. Really interesting from a Reformed perspective. So I did something on Christian meditation with children for them. So yeah, that's about it.
Oh, wonderful. That's a lot. Thank you, Julie, for your gifting to the community across Canada. Really, now online, our boundaries expand. As a parish pastor myself, we have much in common. We're pastors' kids, and we're also work in the parish. I'm particularly interested in how your involvement with Christian meditation relates to your work in the church, and maybe I'll go further and ask for you, what's the biggest challenge in communicating Christian meditation with people who do not have a church connection or history?
Okay. Well, in terms of meditation and sort of being a parish priest and worship and so on, one thing I've been able to do is put a little bit more silence in the worship services themselves. As you know, the worship services, the Sunday services can be very busy. And so even just putting a couple of minutes of silent time after a homily or after communion and getting people used to silence, that's been something that has really worked, I think. People just seem to really want the silence, even if it's just 2 minutes. And so they're becoming more accustomed to silence. I think in terms of just trying to get a meditation group going in the church, it's just a challenge because people are busy. They wonder what meditation is about, and of course, the main thing is just to say, "Come and see," right? Come and try it, and see how you like it. Um, I think churches have a lot of programs happening, and I would like meditation not to be seen as just another kind of program, but something really fundamental to our very being and identity as a church, as a community of faith. So try to get in comments about silence and experience of silence as much as possible, even at meetings, like parish council meetings and things.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of challenges, um, to people who maybe are not churched, I think it's very interesting because in some ways, maybe it's an easier sell to that crowd. I'm just thinking because they don't have the religious kind of,
Mhm.
I don't want to say baggage in a
Mhm.
bad way, but
Mhm. Mhm.
presumptions, and I mean,
Mhm.
um, meditation has become so popular, well known. You go to Shoppers Drug Mart, and there's lots of magazines about
Mhm.
meditation, and so it's become common parlance. So I think people are are keen to say, what is this thing? Like you call it Christian meditation, and in some ways, I feel like it's almost like a back door into the church and into
Mhm.
faith because nothing is
Mhm.
required.
Mhm.
They don't need to know about liturgy. They don't need to
Mhm.
know creeds and so on.
Mhm.
Which I mean, I'm all for people joining a service on Sunday
Mhm.
and learning. But this is a very simple way to come and feel yourself a part of a community in the silence, I think.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, in the universal language of silence, it's a language that is not bound by doctrine or creed,
mhm,
but includes and invites all people into something. As a human being, we do need to sometimes go beyond words, don't
yeah.
we? And that is something that, yeah. Thanks for that, Julie. You're inviting us Christian people and people outside the church, if we
Mhm.
can say that, to a place, a safe place where in silence we can meet the divine in us and around us. So yeah, thank you for that. Back to the pandemic. Oh, what stands out in your experience of the past year, in your experience of the Christian meditation group and finding its way with all the changes?
Yes, indeed.
Mm.
First of all, I had to learn Zoom.
I say we all.
That was the first thing. We eventually got online and we're meeting sort of once a week, like many groups do, and everybody was learning. It was the learning curve of just Zoom for the first couple of months. But once we got into the hang of it, it was great, and it does create community. I found that so much, and and with this expansion where there's geography and age and mobility, there's no barrier to that, right, when you're online. So it's been very inclusive, I think, and very been able to reach out to a lot of people wherever they are in life. um, I think for me, one of the great things during the pandemic has been to try to communicate the gifts of the contemplative life, the Christian contemplative dimension, to church people, because here we are, we're having to let go of our forms of church, like the building, right? And so, in a sense, it's been the spiritual discipline of letting go, right? Um, Letting go of what is passing and focusing on what is permanent, what is eternal, which is what our meditation practice helps us with. And also, that's part of the decrease of anxiety when we really come to learn that through meditation. And with the stay-at-home order, as the wisdom of the fourth century desert monks, go into your cell and your cell will teach you everything. And to say to people, look, what are the spiritual resources that you already have, that God has already given you? And to dig deep into those spiritual resources. As St. Paul says in Ephesians, we've got the unsearchable riches of Christ. the spirit of wisdom and of revelation. You know, there's all these wonderful passages in Ephesians, right, about what God has already given us. So I try to encourage people to say, to dig deep really into what God has already given them. And of course, um, being in the present moment, we haven't, as you know, as church leaders, been able to do much planning, right? We haven't been able to do long-term planning. It's been very short-term planning,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
week by week. So, you know, it's a real lesson in being in the present moment. And sometimes, you know, that's very hard for people because, you know, social committees and people like that, like they love to plan big events and it's just hard. It's hard. Um, and I think, yeah, so letting go, being in the present moment, digging deep into spiritual resources, and just, I really feel like it's a great time for us to say, what does it mean to be the church? You know, what does it mean to be the church? What does it mean to follow Jesus in a pandemic? What, who are we when we're stripped down to our essentials? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah, in meditation, we are confronted with that, both drawing to God, but also afraid. It's not a comfortable
mm,
space to be in. And I think during the pandemic, we have kind of resisted this notion of going into our cell or going into our homes or encountering ourselves in moments that we're not accustomed to in our extroverted, high octane kind of lifestyles. So but meditation does that too. It's not always easy to take that path, but what riches await and what helpful practice of letting go and seeing what is really important. Thanks for articulating, Julie, what many of us are trying to articulate for ourselves. You've hit on those pillars of the meditation practice, like letting go and being in the present moment, not thinking too far ahead. In what ways then do you see in the coming months and year, like looking forward, the meditation community in Canada developing and growing, maybe some nuggets of learning that we want to curate now to see how our community can grow in the future? What do you see on this path moving forward?
well, I see great potential. You know, the
Mm,
Holy Spirit is already working. I mean, as you were saying in the spring
mm,
newsletter, so many things are
mm,
already happening all across Canada. So I think there's potential for growth, both in terms of breadth and in terms of depth.
mm,
So,
mm,
you know, I think we've already seen how the weekly meditation groups can expand so easily, as if people can just, you know, connect to Zoom, boom, it doesn't matter where they are. And so we have groups that would normally maybe have 5 or 6 people showing up in person,
mhm.
becoming 20, 25,
Exactly.
30 so easily.
Yeah.
And there's so many there's so many conveniences, right,
Yeah.
involved with being at
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of benefits, I think. So there's expansion in terms of just the number of people within weekly groups and also maybe the number of weekly
Mhm.
groups
Mhm. Mhm.
themselves. Um, so I think also it's exciting for meditation leaders also because here's the opportunity to meet with people from all over Canada,
Yes.
Ontario, locally, regionally.
Yeah.
I mean, just getting from one end of the GTA to the other, you know, from Mississauga to Pickering, you know, is enough already
Yeah.
to drive, you know.
Yeah.
So it's so easy for us
Mhm.
to just meet, and so I think for the leaders to network, to share best practices, resources, right,
Mhm.
especially to build community and so on.
Mhm.
There's great potential there. Um, and of course, in terms of depth, great opportunities for learning and growing. And some of the groups have already done online retreats, essential teaching weekends, right? And lots of things like the Sarah Bachelor talks from WCCM, using that as a teaching a
Mhm.
framework.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so
Good.
so there's a lot of potential, I think, for both breadth and depth.
That's a good way of putting it. And in that diversity, we see ecumenically boundaries being crossed. People
Yeah.
from different traditions, and also young people and youth who are so much more conversive with the social media platforms. There's so much potential, as you said, Julie. Thank you so much. I want to reiterate again, you are a gift to this community for Christian meditation in Canada. All that you're doing, it's wonderful to see, and it's happening during this time of pandemic, which is a grace and a gift of the Holy Spirit. I look forward to hearing from you more down the road, and maybe at future events online or in person we can reacquaint and get to know each other more. Thank you, Julie, for your time
Thank,
today.
thank you, Martin. It's been a pleasure. All
Bye
right.
bye.
Bye bye.